What's up, beautiful people? Good morning, afternoon, evening. Welcome back to 5 More Minutes. It's your boy. I'm back again with another episode today. So if you're new here, stay listening. If you're kind of old here, what's up? Hello, welcome back to this space. So if you're new here, this is just a space where I kind of come on every Tuesday or so and share a few of my thoughts, and just hope to inspire, motivate somebody to continue doing what they have been called to do, whether that be as little as what's on my heart and what I would have done this week, or a story that interested me, or on the heavier side, which might be what I feel like God is talking to me about this week. This is essentially this open diary where I just express what is in my heart, as filtered and unfiltered as it comes to my mind. I don't know if that makes sense, but yes. But welcome. I apologize if I for missing last week's session. But it's interesting, right? Because I actually plan to record, and I always like to record the day before and edit the same night and then put it all together the next day. But I ended up feeling in my heart that it was more important to be present where I was. And I was like, you know what? I have this dual commitment. And I was like, you know what? It's better that I commit to who needs me here right now. Equally as much as I want to commit to the other thing, let me be in this moment. And that moment was a beautiful moment, watching a friend of ours really get into a deeper side of herself and really express. And we got to share a beautiful moment of fellowship, which is really incredible. But after that, I went over to London, and I had what I would call a very beautiful week, in the sense that there were lots of lessons that I feel like I got exposed to, that it really taught me that life is really beautiful. I already knew, of course, but I had lots of moments of frustrations, but also very elongated periods of silence, in where I was actually not able to do much because I was sat in the back on the Uber. So today I'm gonna share with you guys some of my reflections that happened in those moments, and wherever it goes. But yeah, welcome to 5 More Minutes with your boy. Come on now. But yeah, last week I went over to London. I actually just came back a few days ago. And a friend of mine just visited today, and we put some art up on the wall. If you guys can see the art, we've got some art now, but we ended up in this conversation in reflection of this kind of trip and lots of different things. And she was asking me how I am and how I'm doing and stuff, and I said to her I'm really good. I had kind of in passing had mentioned about this idea of how things are falling apart in my life, etc. And true say, there's a lot of huge life changes. She basically asked how I was handling all that stuff, and I said to her you know what? What's so crazy is I'm good. I'm really, really good. So in thinking about that, when I came to the podcast today, I was thinking, what should I actually even talk about? And I think I want to share with you a few things that I think are beautiful about challenges, and almost this beautiful cyclical nature of how God shows you same patterns but in a different place. And if you're not paying attention, you miss the blessing. So over the last few years, I've talked about this already in an episode before, about this whole huge issue about space, and how a lot of my freedom of expression, a lot of the things I wanted to do and create have been incredibly limited because I had no access to my own space. And going through being homeless in university for a year, depending on people, and all these other things had created this sort of the test for being able to forcibly create what I knew was inside of me, because I just didn't have access to do it the way I wanted to do it. And coming to Manchester made me realize how much of a blessing I'm sitting in as much as things are falling apart. So of course I've talked about this trip to London. We'll get there. But yeah, talking to my friend, and I was when I answered this question, I actually said to her I'm actually all right. And what's crazy is that coming to Manchester for me felt like God gave me a clear message, a clear purpose to come here. I felt anchored by the time I even got here. Even before I got here, I felt anchored to this city, to whatever the mission of this city is. I felt very settled. And what's crazy is that over the last few months, as soon as I moved out, I feel like I have watched some of the greatest securities that enabled me to move out. That might be financially, that might be in business ideas, whatever. Those securities, I've found that they have in a way, like, I wouldn't even say gone dry, but God has made himself very evident that he's the only security that I can truly, truly trust in. Because one thing to learn about this whole COVID thing, the whole COVID-19, is that what you thought could never stop can stop. What you never thought could break can break. And one thing I've learned above all these experiences in life of loss and losing things and dealing with, new situations, being thrown into a whirlwind, God telling you, make this move. And then suddenly it seems like you don't have the provision for it. And then suddenly somehow figuring it out and doing it. And then you look back and you realize you've been sustained the whole time. One thing I've learned is God is the only rock for me that I can truly count on. And I find that super intriguing, that as we were talking, I was kind of looking back on periods of my life, and I noticed this periodization of the fact that I noticed that when I go to a new place that I believe God is sending me to, before I discover, he puts me through this season of waiting for absolutely nothing. But here's the beautiful thing about waiting, specifically when there is a sense of desperation, is that you have this increased sensory ability to suss things out. And I noticed that in this period of waiting, because I'm sort of like in these corners, I become more aware of the room I'm in. And I realized on this trip that even though I'm losing, I've lost a huge part of my life, I had to make a huge decision regarding a job, blah, 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 blah. Huge things, letting go of staff, letting go of people I work with, and lots of controversy in my life. I realized how privileged I equally am in the midst of that loss, in the midst of those changes. This weekend I signed a huge deal from a brand. And there was a day that I would have never imagined working with this brand. But this deal would have been a new deal that would have made us work for the next, basically mean that we were working for the next 6 months. And I remember signing this deal, and they needed me to do something, and I needed to get home. I don't know if someone just knocked on the door. Come in. Oh, I don't know if someone on the door. But I remember needing to come home, but there've been strikes in London, and I went for a whole week of shooting, doing lots of different things. And I remember needing to come home, but not being able to get home. And well, I could, but it would have been extremely difficult. It would have been very hectic. So I told this brand, hey, if you want me to do this deadline in 3 days, you have to get me home. And they were like, yeah, we'll just get you a driver. And now I had this 5-hour journey home in this Addison Lee, and I realized in the back of that seat while moving how privileged I actually am at the fact that even though here and there things are crashing, I'm also able to have this heavenly sustenance that in a way the level of life I live now is still much greater than the first time I identified this pattern of a problem. That in university, when I had loss and I was facing issues and tough things, I just had anxiety. Now I have peace. That it's so incredible how sometimes we miss the opportunity of the blessing because we get so accustomed to the fright of the familiar feeling. And a lot of the hard work I've had to be doing in this moment in my life is make sure that I don't get sucked into the feelings that I felt before, but I acknowledge the feelings and the reality that I'm living in now. And this is really hard because traumas and anxieties just have such a interesting place in our lives. Sometimes they just come in when everything is new and makes you feel unqualified, and you feel like not the best. You feel like the things you've been an expert in for years, you suddenly don't know how to do. But that alone tells you that you absolutely care about the things you're doing. That in fact you can do it well. That the existence of indifference isn't great. It actually means you probably don't care. But if you do care and you feel some sort of fright, some fear, some angst, those are great indicators to say that there is something that's in there for you if you are so patient enough to listen. But when talking to this friend, I realized, wow, God put me in this place in Manchester, and he took a few things away from me, or he allowed a few things to be taken from me. Then because in that, to make a clear decision, there has to be order. And the hardest thing in your life is admitting that you may have been accustomed to living disorderly. So much so that you have created a new order that isn't orderly, that you just lived in the mess so long that the mess became home. And for God to do the renovating work of your heart, he has to clear out trash. And in my life right now, I've had to humble myself to see that there are some decisions I've been making, some things I have chosen to do, some friends I've invested in, some things, businesses I've done, some things I've began that may just have been trash to the grand scheme of what God wants my life to lean towards to. And I want to let anybody know that is going through some sort of sense of disorder or mess and bleak situations, that your life is just being made ordered, that there is a new home being created. And when something is being renovated and restructured and fortified, it often goes through painful changes. That there might be things in there that you've had for years that mean the world to you, but sometimes they have to go so that you have enough space to receive what is now going to be yours. That the thing that has sat in your home for years, if it continues to be there, you may not get the thing that will sit in your life for eternity. So please don't miss. And above all things, I realize that God has put me in such a privileged position that even as I lose, I realize that everything I do is gain. That even as I may lose in this way, that he's also sustained me. And I think we sometimes underestimate that power of sustenance, that godly sustenance. And you know what's so crazy? In this period, seeing this job change, seeing myself lose this thing, having to consider the potential idea that I might have to change careers. Maybe I'm not good enough to do this business by itself, blah, 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 blah. And the whole world looking to you as a professional. All these thoughts came to my mind, and I began to doubt myself. And ultimately, as I began to doubt myself, I also began to doubt God. And I was like, God, maybe I do need to get a job like this. Maybe I do need to do this. Maybe I do need to do that. And in all these maybes, there's this still voice prompting me to, hey, bro, I will make a way. So much so that God gave me such a window of opportunity to stop a few payments that ultimately would have put me in more strain. But they're payments that arguably can't stop. But God made a way to pause the very thing that kept me up at night. Because, owning businesses, right, you can sit at home and costs just relieve you all the time. So if you're not earning money sustainably, or there's a few delays, it doesn't just affect you, it affects real people behind you, real lives, the people who are invested in you. And one of the biggest fears for me in transitions of my life was, okay, how am I going to pay this person next month? How am I going to do this for this person next month? How am I going to meet this commitment I said? And God always finds a way to turn up just on time, because he isn't just a God that just wants to give you everything. He wants to also build everything in you that needs to be built. So do not fret when God chooses to build you and your character through that reward. Meaning, there is probably a method that is easier, much simpler, much more enjoyable to get what you need. But there's a way that will make that change be memorable, and that there will be a move that lasts for the rest of your life. One that changes the fiber of your ember and makes you one step closer to brand new. When the Bible says that you will mount up with wings like an eagle, that there is change that will happen that will cause flight. And right now, you might just still be sat on the floor, but you are growing wings. And you might be suffering, you might be going through pain, but you are about to fly. I spent the week with Paul Brunson, one of my clients, and I got to go to so many cool shows. I was with him on Celebs Go Dating, which he hosts, Married at First Sight, The Big Breakfast Show. And more remarkably than all his notability in the social media world is who he is behind the screen. A person absolutely committed to things he puts in his charge. And I remember we were talking, we were sat in the car heading to one of the private screenings, and we were talking about so much. And he said a few things which I'm going to share with you guys, as I round up today's episode. It's quite short and exciting. I will read a bit of Bible for you as we round up too, but a few things he said that absolutely kind of defined the last few years of my life, that I actually was recanting stuff back to him. But also he said a few things that I'm going to share now. So number one, I remember we shot an Audi advert, some content for Audi a few years back, and I remember in the car he said, in life, you're either in a storm, coming out of a storm, or heading into a storm. And I always laugh at God. I'm like, God, like, yeah, this feels like a storm. But I'm comforted that even if I'm heading into a storm, that God's with me. Even if I'm heading out of a storm, God's with me. And even if I'm in a storm, that God's with me. And I remember that phrase because, yeah, it reminded me of the story of Jesus on the boat. And panic comes first. But the lack of response from Jesus isn't his non-response at all. That he is in fact still. Because in a moment, that stillness will become yours. And ain't nobody changed or been inspired to calm down from somebody who was threatened worse than them. That Jesus wouldn't have been effective if he was scared. But he wasn't. That we serve a God that is alive, that is calm, even in the situation with us, that is making our world tear apart. And there's something beautiful about that. And the second thing he said, which is sort of not on this topic, but we talk a lot about how we treat people. And he told me a story about how you have to really look after your front line and really invest in people. And I remember writing something that stuck with me after that conversation, which was invest into the people that bumped into you accidentally but chose to stay. It's irrelevant to what I've been talking about, but I think it's a really good piece of advice that I think will build you up also. It's something that if you invest into people, it'll build you up in seasons in which you need help. That as I sit here in Manchester, I realize more than ever that I may have lost money. I may have lost 5 years worth of investments and time or whatever. But I've gained friendship. I've gained community. I've gained family. And more than anything, I've gained the deeper part of myself that I would never discovered if God didn't take me through this journey. That is Jesus. And I've known him my whole life. But if I was to live my life continually pushing to discover more of him, then what feels like nothing is everything. So, as I sat this week through all things, I realized how favored I am. And I believe you are too, wherever you are, that you are incredibly favored. Incredibly, incredibly favored. Do not miss the blessing in the mess. Do not miss the blessing in the moment. That a part of you will be living in the future. A part of you will be living in the past. But do not miss the beauty of right now. Do not miss it. Do not miss it. Do not miss it. I'll tell you one final thing and I'll wrap up and I'll read some word for you. I remember sitting at this event. We went to this private screening and I was his photographer, and I remember seeing a bunch of faces of people who, I used to be online with, like some TikTokers, some YouTubers, and they're like huge now. They're getting such amazing brand deals. And for a moment, I was like, man, like they're doing so cool. It'd been cool to come to this event as a guest. And I thought, hold on, wait a minute. Everybody in this room is here to watch something. And I'm here sat with the person who was involved. It almost reminded me of this kind of verse that says, your gifts will make room for you and they'll bring you in front of great men. That as everybody was sat in like non-VIP areas and kind of like was part of this event, blah, 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 I was walking in through the back door with the person who was hosting it all, that he was the most important person, arguably, with his team in that room. And I find it quite funny, not to say that, anybody's greater than anybody, but it more to say that like, it made me appreciate the moments of sacrifice, God being the greatest accountant, that the time you invest into him and into the things that he has asked you to do, those places in where you are discharging the duties of your ministry, whether it's editing a video, singing that song, practicing, being in that place. I remember when I used to have a girlfriend and I used to be so busy and she used to come to mine and we used to spend time and she would have fun with the boys, but I was in there working. Like those moments were hurt because I'm like, I want to spend time with the person I care about, I love, but like, I can't because I got to do some important work. I got to look after my responsibilities. Those days, those hours, those moments also have led up to right now. And God does this thing that when you invest time into him, he reallocates the resources so much so that the times that you felt like, I should have been in that event, I should have been networking, he does such networking for you that you come through the back door of a place that people are waiting outside and waiting for an invite to get to. that you are going as one of the organizers. You're going there as in a position of esteem or respect, that the respect that they had for Paul, the team, was the same respect that they had for me. But I wasn't the same person. That we serve a God who, as he walks in, everything that is his is ours, because we are with him. And I think there's something so comforting about that. And I'm reminded of the story of Joseph. Prisoner, slave, this, that, sold. Wow, hurtful, pain. But he was a prisoner in the right house, in that which when he came out, the king rewarded him everything. And just imagine being Joseph, thinking, everybody's out right now. Brunch, man. I bet they're going on a date. So the man them are out. Flip, like, God, like, what's going on? Like, why am I not out there living my life the way I want to? And there's a beauty in submitting to the authority of God into the moment of where he's placed you, because you might feel like you're in prison. But with God, you're always in the right prison. That indeed he will bring you in front of great men. And the moment he releases you, you wouldn't have to walk through the front where there's a queue, where there's pushing, where there's waiting, that you'll walk straight into the front. And I just found so much, I laughed at it. I said, God, wow, like all those moments, it's as if you just reminded me of how beautiful your accounting is, that you indeed are invested so much in my life, that I felt for a moment, I almost reclaimed every moment that I ever felt like I sacrificed. And it felt so good. It felt incredible. Not because I felt better than anybody else, but only I know how much I've laid down, how much I've sacrificed, how much I wanted to be where everyone was. And now we're in the same room, and I'm questioning. I'm saying, oh, maybe I wish I would have been invited, but I'm in the room. So don't miss out on the room that you are in. Don't worry about what has happened before in the past. Pay attention to where you are now, because I guarantee you there is indeed a blessing in where you are in this immediate moment that is greater than the last time this happened. So it might look familiar, but you are absolutely different. So trust God that he has already done that work in you. Yeah, I really mean that. All right, I'm gonna head out of this. I guess I'll read a Bible verse just to wrap this up, and I don't really know where I want to go. This is so good. But I do think let's read a verse. Sorry, guys. The silent, I think, is really nice. You gotta get in the mood of being contemplative. It's important. Okay. Let me get this verse. There's a verse in my head, but when there's a verse in your head, you can't just find it. And it's in Corinthians. Okay, guys. All right. Let me find this verse for you. I love this. Proverbs 12:24. Hold on. Let me get it up. Proverbs 12:24. The hand of the diligent will rule, while the slothful will be put to forced labor. This idea of this verse is very simple, that individuals who are more passive in their efforts will fall in line behind the diligent and adhere to the guidance and instructions as they have seen and experienced less in the world. This idea that there is also this law in the way God has created things, that if you are diligent to something, you continue to stick at something no matter what the cost is, and you continue to be obedient to something, that already in itself, even without God, will naturally put you in a higher place where you can create impact from. Now just imagine how impactful you could be with God. Imagine how impactful you could be with God on your side, with you on his side, with your heart postured and your spirit aligned to be in the right place at the right time, that you begin to talk about the people you have hoped to speak to. In fact, you're not just seen by them, that you are known by them. And above all this week, the people I've met and sat with are impactful people. And you know what's so crazy? Because of the relationship I have with my client, is that I'm not just this new name. That in fact, that the works of my hand had impacted him so much that when I go to where he's at, people already know who I am because he spoke about me. And I found that so humbling this week. So I want to say to everybody, Proverbs 12:24, the hand of the diligent will rule, while the slothful will be put to forced labor. That the things you delay on doing, you will still have to do it. Don't labor through force. Build a spirit that understand the role of labor, the role of working, and then be diligent with it. And you will see yourself rise into a different place. And there you will make impact. Thank you guys. This has been 5 more minutes, and I hope you have an amazing day, and you feel more inspired to begin to do those things which feel difficult. And I don't know what the hell I've talked about in this episode, but I've talked from the heart, and that's as much as I can say. And I charge you guys to do just one more thing greater than you ever thought you could do. Push yourself and make yourself proud that you indeed can do everything through Christ who strengthens you. And I really, really believe that. So enjoy your days, guys, and take it easy. Life is beautiful. Do not miss the blessing of the moment. Do not miss how beautiful right now is. So yeah, I'll see you guys later.